Communication going forward. Communication going forward. There's going to be a variety of steps here. So as of now, I believe you already have access to your My Christendom account. And so that is going to be the hub of just kind of your the online portion of your life as a student here. So with regards to orientation, all of the required forms that we'll have you fill out will be accessed through My Christendom. And then throughout your time as a student, your class schedules, registering for classes, your grades, all of those things will be accessed through that same portal. And so hopefully admissions has that set up for all of you. If there are any issues with any of that, I believe Aaron is the one to reach out to there. And so I'll be populating the required forms for you all over the course of the next month in that portal. As far as the instructions for what all that looks like, I'll be sending you each a welcome email directly from my email address to whatever personal emails you have set up in your My Christendom account. And that will all be coming to you in the course of the next 2 weeks. I hope to get to it next week. If not, it'll definitely be the week after. And that will have all the instructions for the forms that you're going to need. It'll include some of the information we go over now, because I'll be sending it to everybody regardless of whether they're here right now. It'll include the orientation guide, which has the packing list that I'm sure all of you are excited to see. And then by the beginning of June, our IT department will set up your christendom.edu email addresses. And so once that's set up, you'll get an email to your personal email with instructions for logging into the christendom.edu account. And once you have that set up, that's going to be where you need to be logging in regularly to see any communication from June onwards. We won't use your personal email addresses anymore, and it'll be your responsibility to be regularly checking that inbox. And then throughout the summer, you may have a couple of issues that come to your personal emails, depending on when the IT department gets your christendom.edu account set up. But we have a series of emails that comes to you either once a week or twice a week, depending on certain points in the summer. And it's called Christendom Beginnings. And so each issue will go over a specific topic that's important for you to know about coming in as a student. When you get here for orientation weekend, there's a lot that goes on in the 2 to 3 days of orientation. Just a lot flying at you. And so the more you can be reading these emails and getting a sense of what'll be required of you once you get here, the better, because it's going to be hard to take in everything flying at you over the course of orientation weekend. I'll do my best, and my team will do our best to make it as smooth as possible. But the reality of orientation here and on any campus, it's just a real blur as you step into this next chapter. And so the hope is that these Christendom Beginnings emails just help you to get a real sense of life on campus, how each department works, different staff and faculty who are involved in the different areas of campus. And so hopefully that just gives you a good sense of what to expect by the time you get here. And then finally, we'll have an orientation webpage on the christendom.edu site. As of this afternoon, when I last checked, it's not updated yet. It's still set for the fall 2023 orientation. But over the course of the next week, we'll start updating that for you all. And then that page will be kind of a center hub for anything that has to do with orientation week itself. So once the schedules are posted, they'll be available on that website. You can always access some of the essentials, such as the orientation guide that I'll be sending in that welcome email that I mentioned, the student handbook, your summer reading. All of those things can be accessed on the orientation webpage. So when in doubt, that's always a good first place to check. So moving on to the different required forms. So like I mentioned, there's going to be a number of forms you're required to fill out over the course of the summer. We have 12 required forms, and then there's a number of optional forms depending on your individual circumstances. So for the required forms, there's a series of health and physical exam forms. And so if one thing that you'll need to do over the summer, if you don't have a regular routine checkup, is schedule a physical exam, and you'll need to bring these forms to your physician to have them fill them out and sign them. And if you have vaccines or immunization history, that will all need to be included on these forms. If you don't have a history, or you would like to opt out of certain immunizations for personal reasons, there's also an optional immunization waiver form that you can fill out, and you just indicate which vaccines you're waiving. But if you've received vaccines, that'll all need to be something your physician signs off on these forms, as well as your standard physical checkup information. And then there's a form that you need to fill out any information you have on your own health insurance, whether you have it or not, and if you do have it, what the policy number and all those things are. There's a physical activity waiver that everyone needs to sign, just because every student is going to be participating in different various forms of physical activity while they're a student here. There's dietary restriction and allergen waiver that you'll need to fill out. And then this actually should be marked under optional, but there's a form that's entitled personal information for billing. It's actually just a form that asks for your social security number. It's optional, but if you are planning to receive a 1098 for your taxes, in order to receive that credit, you'll need to enter your social security number through this form to be passed on to the billing office. We'll have a move-in day survey so that we can get a sense of how many members of your family will be coming, what time you'll be arriving, all those things. And that's something you're welcome to fill out later in the summer, but that will be a required form. There is a sexual misconduct policy review, which there's a video from Dr. Amanda Graff with an overview of our sexual misconduct policy that every student's required to watch. And then you sign this form to say that you watched that video. And then general registration acknowledgement, which is the way the form is set up is basically you're saying I have read the student handbook and what is expected of me, and I agree to live by these terms. And so we'll talk more about the student handbook, but it is a long document, but we do expect that every student have read through it before they get here, and that they agree to abide by all the policies we have as a Christendom student. And so that's an important one as well. And all of these forms are going to be due by July 6th, which is Saturday. So you've got a good amount of time. If your physician can't get you in before then, that's totally fine if you send me an email and we delay that form. But the physical exam aside, all of these forms need to be in by that first weekend in July. And then the optional forms, which may or may not be before that July date, the immunization waiver that I mentioned. There will be a transportation request form that I send you if you will end up needing a ride from Dulles Airport or Vienna Metro to get to campus in the fall. If you're going to be parking a vehicle on campus, you'll have to register that vehicle before you get here. And I'll be sending out one of the emails over the summer. We'll have more information about parking on campus. And I believe Mr. Phillips already made clear with all of you that freshmen are allowed to bring cars. You're just expected to register before you bring it onto campus, and then abide by all the parking policies while it's here. And then there's a roommate questionnaire if you live on campus. Not required. We'll house you even if you don't fill this out, but this is just a form where you can tell us your living preferences, what time you like to go to bed, and there's a number of other things on there. So we do our best to match you with other students who lifestyle preferences to you, to minimize as much conflict as we can. I will say, I was telling Mr. Phillips earlier this year, in general, our residence directors do a fantastic job with housing, and it's very rare. I think we've had one guy and one girl in general each semester at most who requests to switch rooms because of differences with their roommates, and so this form is very helpful tool for the RDs as they go about housing all of our incoming students. And then if you plan to live off campus, there's a form that you need to fill out to be approved by Mrs. Plasberg and the billing office. The default for all of our students is that they live on campus. We consider ourselves a residential community, but we can make exceptions for financial reasons, or if you live locally and you'll be living with your parents, things like that. So that form will be available to anyone who needs to make that request as well. One other thing on the roommate form, if you have somebody in mind already that you'd like to room with, there is a place on that form to note, I would like to room with this specific person. And as long as both people put that on their form, or if you've got three of you who want to all room together, as long as everybody mentions each other on their forms, we can make that happen. So just want to throw that out there as well. All right, to jump into the different departments. So student support services, Ms. Kaylin Damitz is our Director of Student Support Services. She oversees all academic accommodations as well as different tutoring and things like that on campus. She's a fantastic resource for helping everybody stay on top of their academic workload. And so she's somebody that you can go to throughout the entire year if you feel like you're underwater academically or just looking for some advice on scheduling homework or papers, things like that. But especially if you are going to seek any specific accommodations for health reasons, she's the one that you're going to want to reach out to, and she'll let you know what documentation is required in order to make those accommodations possible. We do have housing and food accommodations as well. If you need housing accommodations, there are I don't know off the top of my head what the list of possible accommodations are, but if you know already you need a certain accommodation, Mrs. Plasberg is the one to reach out to. And then if you have food allergies, I believe Mr. Heim, who runs our operations department, is the one to reach out to currently. It used to be through this department, and it recently changed, as far as I understand. But I will make sure I get all of that information to you along with the proper email addresses. But just to put Kaylin on your radar now, she's a fantastic resource for academics for all students, whether or not accommodations are something that you'll need. So residence life is Mrs. Plasberg and the RDs. I don't work, I'm not considered directly to be part of the residence life team, but I work very closely with the residence life team. And so, as I mentioned already, they'll be overseeing housing. The roommate questionnaire goes to the residence life team. And I know that a lot of you, if you haven't made plans already, are definitely wondering who you're going to room with. And I mentioned already, we'll send out a recommended packing list with the orientation guide in my welcome email to you all next week or the week after. There are some residence life policies that are mentioned in that guide, but if you want the fullest overview, you're going to want to read the student handbook. Right now, the current academic year's handbook is still posted on the website, but by June at the latest, we'll have next year's handbook. There's not that much that's going to change in between this year and next year. So if you want to get a head start on reading that now, you're more than welcome to read this year's handbook, and that'll give you a very accurate sense of what the policies will be even next year. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I should mention with residence life. I guess if dress code questions, things like that, the student handbook is a good place to start. But like I said, you can always reach out to me if you have questions that you're not sure how to find the answers to. In general, I'd say that the freshman men are mostly housed in St. Benedict Hall. If you've been to campus already, that's the center of the men's quad. There are a few freshmen who will be placed elsewhere just because of the size that your class will be. And then for the women, most of them are in St. Campion and St. Catherine halls. Again, maybe a few elsewhere, but in general, that's where most of the freshmen will end up. And then, just as an FYI, for move-in day, families are certainly allowed to help move in with when you're moving into residence halls. But because we have single-sex halls, we just ask that if you're a female and you have male family members helping you move in, that they not be in the halls outside of 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Just that they only be in there in that window, um, uh, just for the sake of the girls' privacy, and vice versa. So for the guys' halls, same thing. If you have female family members helping you move in, that they're only in there in that window to respect the men's privacy. I think that's everything for residence life for now. I'll have plenty more to throw at you this summer with regards to housing and policies and things like that, but I think that's a good overview for now. If you're planning to play sports, many of you probably have heard from Patrick Quest, who's our athletic director already, but he will be reaching out to you next week, just your class in general, to find out if there are athletes that he has not been in touch with already. One thing that Patrick and the school just emphasize in general is that we are an academic institution first, and so it's always important to remember that anyone who's playing a sport at Christendom is a student first, and that their academics come before the athletics. And Patrick does a very good job of holding our athletes to high standards with academics. Overall, our athletes have very high GPAs compared to most of the nation. Our women basketball team this year won the national championship. So you can see the picture at the top right of the screen here from that championship. And the women's basketball team also had the highest GPA out of all the sports teams on our campus, which was really impressive just for them to go so far, take the trophy home and still have such a high GPA as a team. So we have 11 varsity sports. In the fall, we have men's and women's soccer, women's volleyball. We have men's 15s rugby, men's and women's cross country. In the winter, we have men's and women's basketball. And in the spring, we have men's baseball, women's softball, and men's sevens rugby. And then we also have a strong intramural program. And so the students are really good at putting on these intramurals sports throughout the year that run for certain periods of time. And there's always at least one intramural going on, I think, for throughout most of the year. And we, over the course of the year, we definitely have a good percentage of students participate in these intramurals. I'd say about close to 50% of our students participate in at least one intramural throughout the year. So good way to stay active, even if you're not planning to play a varsity sport. One thing I will mention, if you're planning to play a fall sport, so that would be the soccer teams, volleyball, and 15s rugby. Those teams do, I think, generally arrive early to campus for some mini camps before orientation. And so instructions on that will come from Patrick Quest over the summer. But just to note that even though those teams come early, all of the athletes on those teams who are new students are still expected to come through all the same orientation, registration events that everybody else is coming through. So you'll get here early. We'll do some basic orientation to make sure you're set for the week. But then come Friday with move-in day for everyone else, you still will go through the same process, same events that everyone else does. Jumping to billing, you'll receive a lot more info from the billing office over the summer. The balance for the fall semester will be due August 15th. So make sure that you do what you need to apply for outside loans, to make sure those come in time for that deadline. Definitely, I'd recommend by the end of July, if not sooner. And any questions with regards to loans or billing, anything like that, would be directed to Ms. Claire Finlay, who's our financial aid officer. You can see her email address here on the screen. And she and the rest of her team in the billing office will be very quick about getting back to you with answers. On a related note, we also do offer a variety of jobs on campus for students in various departments. I haven't checked yet with the billing office to see if the pay here mentioned here is still accurate for next year. In general, our jobs do pay around $10 an hour. Certain jobs might be slightly less, slightly more, depending on the level of responsibilities. And on average, most student jobs are 9-hour per week requirement. And most offices utilize at least a few students. So there's quite a few opportunities on campus. You may not get the exact office you want coming in as a freshman, but there will be plenty of opportunities for you even as freshmen. And over the course of your time here, there's plenty, depending on what your interests are, plenty of opportunities to work in various departments to get some good diversity of experience. The job board for that will be posted around mid-July. Unfortunately, there's no one point in the summer where all of the jobs get posted. It's sort of a rolling job board. So once that's posted, you'll just want to be checking it over the course of the rest of the summer to see if there's anything that interests you. And so you can apply to anything that comes up. If there's like a specific department that you're interested in working for and you don't see a job posted on that page, Mrs. Caligari, who's our payroll and benefits manager, oversees all of the student employment. And so you can always email her directly to tell her what you're interested in, and she can coordinate with the department that you're asking about to see if there's opportunities there. She's a real hoot, really fun to work with. So definitely don't hesitate to reach out to her if you have questions. I will send a Christendom Beginnings email dedicated to student employment in early to mid-July with a lot more information about that as well. One thing to know, if you are interested in working on campus, it's really important that you bring a second form of government ID with you when you come to campus. It can't be a copy, it needs to be original. So if you have a passport, that's definitely the easiest option, but it also could be a birth certificate, social security number card, but you will need to bring an original of some second form of ID. So I'll be sending a lot of reminders about that once I send out the job board. Because if you come to campus without that second form of ID, you won't be able to start working until it gets sent here. So just that's something that I'll just throw out there now, because that can be a headache. All right, academics. So the academics, again, like I've mentioned, that's hopefully the primary reason you're coming. We're an academic institution. The reason that you're here is for the studies. And so everything, your vocation will be to study, to be a student over the course of your time here, and anything else you participate in, be it sports, jobs, etc., should be second to your studies. So Dr. Andrew Whitmore will be our academic dean for the 24-25 year. So you can see his email address and photo here. Any questions you have over the course of the summer about classes, academics, can all be directed to him. So I mentioned Kaylin Damitz earlier. She's a good person to reach out to if you'll need accommodations. Any questions about classes in general should be directed to Dr. Whitmore. And then once you're here as a student and things are rolling, Kaylin can be a good person to go to for tutoring and just help if you're struggling academically. And then Dr. Whitmore would be kind of a more administrative person to go to with more administrative questions, such as what classes you're required to take, or if you need to switch classes, drop a class, things like that. would all be through Dr. Whitmore. I will have a Christendom Beginnings email by the end of July that has the instructions for how you register for classes, because I know that's another big thing that everyone's excited for. And when I send that email, that's when you'll get your book lists, course information, and things like that. So if you're itching to get your hands on those, just know those may not be coming until the end of July. I'll also have Christendom Beginnings emails that talk a little bit about what courses you'll need to take throughout your time at Christendom. There's a Latin placement test if you've taken Latin already. As far as the books go, I'll mention a few books at the end of this webinar that are general requirements. But it's important to note that each professor, even if there are two different professors teaching the same course, may sometimes have different book requirements. And so I wouldn't start buying books outside of what I send you today before you see your book lists and before you're registered for classes, because the professor you get might have his own specific requirements. We don't have a bookstore on campus, so you'll need to plan to order everything online, or if you know past students you can purchase used books from, that may be an option as well. But just know there's not one central place once you get here to buy the required books. So make sure you do what you can ahead of time. You will have an academic advisor throughout your time at Christendom. You'll find out who that will be over the course of orientation weekend. So that's not something that's sent to you ahead of time. Dr. Whitmore is your go-to person for any class questions until you get here. And then you'll have an advisor who can answer more questions that are more personal to your track and your major and things like that once you're here. And then the last thing I'll mention for now with the academics is that every student is required to take a plagiarism test before they get here. It's an online module. You don't have to study for it, but you need to send proof that you've gone through the course before you arrive. So that will also be in a Christendom Beginnings email. You'll have a link to the test. You'll go through the test. At the end of it, it'll give you a PDF certificate, and then you would send that certificate to Dr. Whitmore via email. It's just important because, plagiarism is always it's a tricky thing in academics. A lot of people can slip into it without even realizing it's something they're doing. And so this is just a test to make sure that you can recognize plagiarism and that you know what is expected of you as far as citing other people's work and things when you're writing papers while you're here. All right, so looking towards orientation, I mentioned earlier there will be a transportation request form that I send you. That will be if you need a ride from Dulles Airport or Vienna Metro. If you're flying into a different airport, just know you'll need to find some way to get to one of those two places in order for the official Christendom shuttles to pick you up. I believe at least Reagan has the metro that can take you to Dulles, but just know it'll be Dulles or Vienna Metro are the options. Let's see. If you have questions about the transportation form, you can email transportation@christendom.edu, and they can get back to you with answers on that. For move-in day itself, it's going to be Friday, August 23rd. You can come as early as 10 a.m. We ask that you not come earlier, and as late as 3 p.m. And we ask that you not come later than that, because then orientation events start rolling beyond that. And families are welcome on campus throughout Friday and then Saturday morning. So I will be sending a schedule out in early June for what that weekend looks like. In general, I can tell you now there will be a 4 p.m. Mass that's available on Friday the 23rd if you're looking to receive the sacraments. And then there's an orientation dinner that families are invited to on Friday night. And you would RSVP for that via the move-in day survey that I mentioned earlier. And then parents will have a reception with the faculty in the evening, while the new students will have their own event with some of the returning students who are on campus early to help you all move in. So that'll be a good place to start meeting people and getting to know both your class and some of the returning students. On Saturday, we'll have a continental breakfast that families are invited to. There will be a tour of campus for families while you all are in various orientation sessions in the morning. And then there will be 11:30 a.m. Mass on Saturday, which families are also welcome to come to. And then that's the point where we ask that families leave. So it's really important, just for the sake of allowing you all the space to get settled, to feel like this is your new home. We just ask that families leave, after 11:30 a.m. Mass on Saturday. And then student orientation will continue throughout the rest of the weekend and a little bit into the following week with different sessions, informational sessions, different events. There's a gym night, there's a barn dance, different ways to just like I mentioned earlier, it's a whirlwind, but the hope is that you do feel more integrated into the community by the end of it all. The bishop comes out for Sunday Mass on orientation weekend. So there's a lot of good stuff that happens. So just ask that you hang tight and just give it your all, give it your best. And then classes start the Tuesday following move-in weekend. We'll have a few orientation evening sessions throughout that following week, but the bulk of it will be Friday through Monday. I mentioned family coming on Friday. Just to be clear, parents are not required to come on Friday. If you'll be coming on your own, that's completely okay. We'll have teams here to help you move in if you need help carrying your stuff, finding your way around campus. So no worries if you're going to be coming by yourself. We'll have everything spelled out for you and teams to help. But as much of your family that wants to come as well, welcome to for move-in day. So parents, younger siblings, etc. Everybody's welcome to come. There'll be various opportunities. I think I mentioned a few already, that families can meet each other over Friday and Saturday morning. And then I'll provide a list. I think there might already be one on the website of different lodging and restaurant availabilities in the Front Royal area, in case you need a place to stay or you're looking to get off campus for a meal while family is here. We will have a Friday lunch option if you'll be coming on the earlier end of Friday in our dining hall for a small fee if you'd rather that than going into town. All right. So what can you do right now? First thing I'd say is to pray. I'd suggest praying for peace. I know there's a lot of uncertainty and just maybe disquiet that can come with entering into a new chapter. So there's I'm sure a lot of change coming down the pike, but you'll have hope. But it's always good to just pray for peace. Pray for your future classmates and their families, especially knowing that they're all going through the same anxieties and unknowns that you are. And then just for fortitude, perseverance, and prudence as you go through this process. We do have a video. There's a link here, and I believe Mr. Phillips or Ben will send you this presentation after all this, where you can actually click on these links. But we have a YouTube series that prior Director of Student Support Services put together on just 5 challenges that freshmen often face. And they're short videos, but very helpful just to give you a sense of some practical tips you can use to just settle in and persevere through some of the most common challenges that you'll face. You can read the student handbook, like I mentioned. So that'll be on the orientation page. If you want to search the Christendom website, you can find this year's handbook to get a jump start on that. But I'll let you know once the new one is posted as well. You can get a head start on some of the books that I'll show you on the next slide here. And then for parents, just suggest suggesting that you have open and honest conversations with your kids now. Just want to mention that I'm sure that you've had a big part in getting that. Well, obviously, you've had a huge part in getting them to the point they're at now. Our hope as they transition into college life is that we treat them as adults. And so just using the summer to prepare them as much as you can while you're together, and just being ready to hand them off, and trust them, to trust the upbringing you've given them, and to just be ready to let them take a step into their next chapter on their own. And just whatever conversations are needed to get to that point. I recommend you have those sooner rather than later. So as I mentioned, here are some of the books that you can purchase if you're itching to get a head start on your reading. These are all requirements in the core, the freshman core, regardless of professor. So when you get these slides, you can click these links to purchase these books if you don't have them already. All right. So if you have questions, let's see, it looks like we have a few already. If you have questions, I'll go ahead and throw those in the chat. I'll answer them in order. And then once it looks like those stop coming in, we can close with a prayer and get you on your way. It looks like Norman asked about the student mailing address. So I'll include that in a Christendom Beginnings email as well, but just for reference now, that address is 9292 Christendom Drive, Front Royal, Virginia, 22630. And you are welcome to send any books, packages, anything you need to ahead of time to that address. If possible, I'd ask that you wait until July to start mailing those things, just to avoid things getting lost. But once you're really jumping into a class registration, and once you know what if there are bulky items you need to bring or anything like that, you're welcome to ship them to that address. Let's see. Marcelina asked if it's possible to get the medical forms by the end of May. The answer is yes. If you need the medical forms sooner rather than later, feel free to shoot me an email and I'll just send you the PDF. And then I'll have the form with the PDF posted to your My Christendom account next week. So if you need it ASAP, I can email it to you. But if you can wait a week, you can access it through your My Christendom portal as well. Looks like Jess asked where we can get the reading list. I assume that's referring to this list I showed in the webinar. That will be available when this webinar PowerPoint is emailed to you all. And then there is a required summer reading packet that will be available on the orientation page. I believe you can access that even using last year's orientation page. It's a article, I guess you'd say, an excerpt from a writing of St. Basil the Great. So that will be included in Christendom Beginning, but if you want to get a head start on that, I think that's available even now on the Fall 23 orientation page. Annalise asked if you're required to read all those books this summer, and the answer is no. The St. Basil reading will be the one thing you are expected to read before you get here. The other books I mentioned are just if you want to get a head start. The professors won't expect you to have read any of these, and they'll be operating under the assumption that you haven't by the time you get here. So Ed asked if we could display this book list again, so I'm happy to just leave this open if you guys want to jump on that now. Veronica asked about the date for signing up for classes. So that's all. Walter Gennaro is our registrar. He actually was a member of the very first graduating class from Christendom, and he's been here ever since. So he is in charge of class registration. Generally, that's at the end of July, but I leave that up to him. Whatever he tells me is what I'll communicate to you through Christendom Beginnings. There's not a set date for now, but it won't be later than the end of July. I can say that. Oops, it looks like somebody said I cut out when we were talking about parking. Freshmen are allowed to bring a car to campus. You're just expected to register the vehicle before you arrive. And then once you get here, if you've registered your car, I'll have a parking decal for you in your orientation packet that you'll place on your windshield. Catherine asks, do I have guidance as to what sort of a laptop is recommended for classwork? That is a good question. In general, it's actually not a requirement at all. We do have a working computer lab in our library. And I'd say our student body has quite a variety of the types of laptops they use. It can range anywhere from a cheap Chromebook to a really fancy gaming laptop. I would just say whatever is best for your taste. Every student is provided with an Office 365 account. And so whether or not you have Office on your computer now, you'll be given that software for free to download if you don't. And then if you don't have a computer at all, we have had students who get by with just using our library computers just fine. I personally am very passionate about intentional use of technology. And so if you are willing to take the challenge to come to campus without a laptop, you have my full support. So let's see. This thing keeps jumping around on me. Laurel asks, when can returning students move in? That would be on August 24th. So that's the day after new students arrive. They won't have, I'll just say the returning students won't have meals provided until dinner on Saturday. So that's just something to keep in mind. Teresa asks where to send AP scores to get credit. That would be a great question for Dr. Whitmore. So you can send Dr. Whitmore an email. Again, his email address will be in the slides, and then he'll be included in some of the early Christendom beginnings as well. He's a great person to reach out to make sure those credits can transfer, and then he'll talk you through what it'll take to get them transferred. Luke asks if there's a separate application process for the chamber orchestra or other musical opportunities such as choir. I don't know specifics on that. I'm happy to, if you email me, since I don't have your email address yet, my email is timothy.cook@christendom.edu. I can send you Dr. Potterack, who's the director of the music program here at Christendom. I can send you his contact info if you want to go ahead and reach out to him. Monica asks if she would apply for jobs through My Christendom. And the answer is actually no. We have an HR system called Paycom, and so you'll be set up with a student account. Well, I should clarify. The job board will be posted through Paycom, and then if you apply for a job, then you would set up a Paycom account, and that's all just part of registering or applying for these jobs. So that'll be a specific link that I send you at the mid to end of July in a Christendom Beginnings email. Let's see. Luann asks if there is a parents and family weekend in the fall. There is. I am blanking on the date, a specific date at the moment, and I'm not sure I can pull it up fast enough for you. It's at the end of September, so I believe it's either the weekend of the 21st or the 28th, but I will send more info on that. And you will certainly hear from Student Life well before that happens with the registration info and everything as well. Karen asks about testing out first year Latin. There will be a Christendom Beginnings email dedicated to that very question. There is a Latin placement test that you would take before you arrive. Brian asks who to ask about receiving college credits from high school. Again, that's a question for Dr. Whitmore. So if you could email him, it's andrew.whitmore@christendom.edu, and he can walk you through that process. Um, wow, this keeps jumping around on me. Sorry. Cheryl asks, when do student shuttles that travel to Front Royal begin? How frequently do they run, and where do they stop? So we have student shuttles. We have 15 passenger vans that run from our dining hall into town every evening during the semester. There will be certain days where they don't run, but the transportation office is very good about sending students announcements if there are canceled shuttles. But in general, there's one every evening around, I want to say 4:30 p.m. And if you're familiar with Front Royal, there's a whole shopping center. So I guess on the northeast side of town, north side of town, I guess I'd say, with Walmart. There's a Target. Trying to think what else is over there. Walmart. I'd say most students use Walmart. There's an Aldi over there. Um, so that's generally where those shuttles will run. Luke asks if there are placement tests for other subjects than Latin. That's something you could ask Dr. Whitmore about. I don't believe that there are, um, but you can ask Dr. Whitmore, and he would know for sure. Oh, Monica just found out that the family weekend is September 27th, 28th. So thank you for finding that. And then shuttles running to the airport. Sophia asks about that. We have shuttles that run at the beginning and the end of each break. And so we'll have the shuttles running to the airport before the fall semester begins. We'll have shuttles for fall and Thanksgiving breaks. We will have shuttles at the beginning of Christmas, like before Christmas break, and then following Christmas break. Shuttles for spring break, Easter break, and then at the end of the school year. In between those times, there are no shuttles. If you need to fly home for a wedding or something like that, those are going to be rides you'll need to coordinate on your own. Catherine asks, does the chapel close in the evenings? The answer is right now it's no. The chapel is open 24/7 as of now. We're working on getting better locks installed on the chapel doors. So once those are installed, the chapel will be locked, but there will be a door with a pad where students can code into the chapel. So students can access it 24/7 with just keep in mind, freshmen and sophomores do have curfew at midnight before class days and 1 o'clock before not class days. And so you wouldn't be, in general, you wouldn't really be expected to be going to the chapel after those times. But as far as the evening times before that, you would have access to the chapel. Mary asks, for the books listed on the screen, are those translations or editions required, or can you use other editions? So if there is a specific edition mentioned here, so we've got the Iliad by Richard Lattimore, the Odyssey translated by Robert Fitzgerald. Those are specific translations that are required for the course. And even if you somehow find a translation published by a different publisher, I'd recommend sticking with this edition because professors will generally say on this specific page number, we're going to reference this thing. And so if you have a different edition, even if it's the same translation, you may be lost in class if you can't find the exact part of the book that the rest of the class is looking at. So there will be certain professors who and books that may not have a specific recommendation, but any on here on this specific list, I would recommend getting this specific edition. Catherine asks what size the dorm mattresses are. Thank you very much for asking because I meant to mention that earlier and I forgot. They're twin regular. So I know a lot of universities have I believe they're twin long or something like that. But ours are twin regular. So don't buy the longer sheets. I hope that answers your question. All right. Let's see. I don't know. I'll give maybe one more minute to see if anyone posts any more questions. All right. Looks like we're all set. So thank you very much for taking the time to jump in here and learn about the orientation weekend before we're there. I'm really excited to get to meet you all in August. Please feel free. I'm just going to pull up one more time the last slide. Here's my email address. No question is a stupid question. So please email me anything, even if it's a question you feel like needs to be asked of another department and you're just not sure which department, you can send it to me and I can point you in the right direction. My phone number, if you need to call me over the summer, is 540-551-9218. And I'll just post that in the chat real quick too, if you need it. Oops, that might not have gone to everybody. Sorry, 1 second. And then other than that, we'll just close with a prayer, and I hope you have a blessed rest of your week. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Well, glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end, amen. Our Lady, Queen of Christendom, pray for us. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. All right, everybody, God bless, and thank you.